We'll do a review in Likutei Sichos in Chelek Chav Gimel, volume 23. This is the third Sicha for the Parshas Vayelech. It's a Rashi Sicha. And the Rebbe gives here a whole different approach in what seems to be a very difficult Rashi. In the end of Parshas Vayelech, Rashi explains over there about how Moshe Rabbeinu, before he passed, he gathered the Jewish people, told them about the Sefer Torah. So it was done without chatzotzros, without the usual way, the trumpets. As we'll see why that was. And Rashi brings in seemingly a totally separate matter that also Yehoshua didn't use the trumpets. The Rebbe wants to know, how does Yeshua not using the trumpets have to do in this Rashi over here? Well, let's go step by step, and we'll see how the Rebbe explains the Rashi beautifully in a different way than it would seem on the surface in the first approach. Aleph. B'siyum parshosenu, in the end of our parsha, in the Shvi, in the Parshas Vayelech, wird erzählt, it is related, as Moshe Rabbeinu hat angesagt, die Leviim neusei Arein Bris Hashem, that Moshe Rabbeinu instructed the Leviim, those who are the ones that carried the covenant, the Oren, the box that had the covenant of Hashem with the luchas in it. So he told them, take the Sefer Torah, either put it in the Oren, or there was a side panel outside of the Oren, as Rashi brings down the opinions. Take the Sefer Torah, and then he says, Hakihilu Elai, as kol ziknei shivteichem v'sheitreichem v'adabre v'ozneim. Gather to me all the elders of the tribes and the shoitrim, the enforcers. I want to speak to them. Moshe Rabbeinu was once again encouraging them about listening to what it says in the Sefer Torah that he has just told them to take and place it in the Oren. So, stellt sich Rashi over Hilu Elai. So Rashi places himself on the words, quotes from the Pasuk, gather to me, and is mefarish, and he explains, that day, when they gathered, this gathering that takes place at the end of Moshe Rabbeinu's life, they did not blow in the trumpets to gather the community. All the time, as we learned earlier in the Chumash, when they were gathering the community, they used the trumpets to gather them. But in this time, they did not use the trumpets. And soon we'll see in a minute how we know that they didn't use the trumpets. How does Rashi know that? Because, as the Rebbe will explain, as it seems, is because it was here talking to the Leviim that they should gather the trumpets. To gather the Yidden was done by the Kohanim, not by the Leviim. So we know that this wasn't done by the trumpets. But why not? So Rashi explains, why did they not gather that day with the trumpets? Lefisha nemar asay lecho. Because the Pasuk tells Moshe Rabbeinu, Hashem says to Moshe Rabbeinu, you make these trumpets for you. So they were designated just for the use of Moshe Rabbeinu. And then Rashi brings in that Even Yehoshua had no right to the trumpets. He did not have Yehoshua dominate the trumpets, meaning using those trumpets. We'll see soon why Rashi uses the lotion of dominate, hishlit Yehoshua alayim. But even Yehoshua, says Rashi, did not have the authority, did not use the trumpets. And Rashi adds now that v'av b'chayev nignezu koidem yoim moisem, also during his lifetime. Even before Moshe Rabbeinu passed away, these trumpets were hidden. They went into Gniza, they went into hiding, koidem yoim moisem, before the death that he died. At the day that he passed away, which when this gathering took place, Moshe Rabbeinu did not have those trumpets. The Kayim Mashenemar, that was to fulfill that which the Pasuk says, Ve'ein shiltoi b'yoyim hamoves, there is no dominant on the day of death. So when Moshe Rabbeinu passed away, which is the last day when this Hakhilu took place, gathering them with the trumpets would be a expression of dominance, a shilton, and because he was dying then, ein shilton biyad yom hamoves, so therefore the trumpets were hidden and he did not blow on the trumpets. That's what Rashi explains. So we'll see. The question, what we have here is, because if Rashi is trying to explain why there wasn't the normal trumpets, because it was done by the Leviim and not by the Kohanim, Rashi should just say that Moshe Rabbeinu did not have the trumpets in that day, and therefore it wasn't gathered through the Kohanim which used the trumpets. But why does Rashi have to bring in the whole thing about Yeshua, that also Yeshua didn't use it, it wasn't Yeshua's? That's not the issue over here. The issue is here why Moshe Rabbeinu didn't use it. And the answer to that is Ein Shiltain B'Yom Hamoves. The Pashtus Learnment, simply we learn, as the Inshaile in Posik was Rashi kommt verantworten, is what is Rashi coming to answer? What would be the question in this verse? Rashi allein sagt, the question would be, as Rashi says, that on that day they did not blow in the trumpets to gather the call. And that's the question. So the question is, Parvos hat man nit makil gewendem call durch die Chatzotros? So how come we did not get the community together through the trumpets? Wie steht in Parshas Ba'aloischa, as we read in the portion of Ba'aloischa, make for you these two trumpets, and that would be to gather to call the community. So how come they didn't call that way? So that's Rashi's question over here. Now, how do we know that they didn't use the trumpets? It's because Moshe Rabbeinu was talking to the Leviim to gather them, and the Leviim did not use the trumpets. Und der Hechrech zu sagen, hilu, and the proof that we say, that we have to say at this gathering, made nit makel sein, gemishpat hayedu vayre b'chatzroisros, does not mean to gather them as the known way, the usual way, with the trumpets, is from them, is from the fact was der tzivui shel Moshe hakhilu is given to the Leviim, is because Moshe's instruction to gather went to the Leviim. Und the tkiya b'chatzotzeres, and the blowing in these trumpets hat gemus sein darfke durch die Kohanim, It needed to be specifically through the Kohanim, Bnei Aaron HaKohanim, as the pasuk says there, the sons of Aaron, the Kohanim. And since he's sending the Levim to gather them, they couldn't use it, so we know they didn't use it. So the question is that Rashi wants to know, how come they didn't use the trumpets? So Rashi says, well, they didn't use the trumpets because ein shilton b'yom hamavis. So that it was taken away. There were no more trumpets then. But why does Rashi have to bring in about Yeshua, that Yeshua not having the trumpets? As is aber nicht verstandig, but what's not understood was Rashi sagt, that Rashi says, the fish and nemarase lecho, v'lo hishlit Yeshua aleim. Because the pasuk says, make for you. That means for Moshe. And Yeshua was not given the dominance over the Chatzotzros to use them. Why does Rashi bring this? Yehoshua man dechar shmei. Who talking about, who mentioned the name Yehoshua here? Why are we talking what Yeshua did or didn't do? Rashi kum doch verantworten. Rashi is coming to answer Ravosot Moshe nit makil given them kol al dei Chatzotzros. How come Moshe did not gather the community through the Chatzotzros? Hat Rashi gedacht sagen bekitzur? Rashi should have said brief short. The reason they didn't blow in order to gather the community, so that it will fulfill what it says. There's no shilton b'yemamoves, so there was no chatzotzros. Then have to say that they hid them. No, just they didn't know there's no shilton b'yemamoves. Actually, in the source of it, Itaka doesn't say this extra piece about Yehoshua. It just says about Moshe in the source from where Rashi takes his pshat. Nochmer. The moked from the Pirush Rashi is in Tanchuma. Umedrash Rabbe, Rashi's source is in Tanchum Medrash Rabbe. Oifam Posik, Asay L'cho. Over there it says, in the Posik, Asay L'cho, in the portion of Bahal Loischo. So over there, it brings down this idea that Moshe Rabbeinu didn't use it in the day when he was makil, on the last day of his life, when he was makil, the Yidna that day. So over there on the Pasuk, Asay L'cha. Aber dort wird Tage der Ingen von Loishte Yaakov Yeshua Aleim nicht gebracht benegeya der HaKahola von Oisayim. Over there, this idea that Yeshua was not given the dominance is not brought down in association to the gathering that took place on the last day on Oisayim. It's a separate matter. Shemeis Moshe, that Moshe died. It doesn't talk there about Yeshua, nor as in Algemein. Over there, it brings down the issue that that Yeshua didn't use them. About their posik zogt asay lecho, we learned it says lecho. Ato mishtamish behem, ve'inachar mishtamish behem. You use them and nobody else used them. Where do we see that nobody else used them? Teida loch. I'll bring you a proof that nobody else is allowed to use them. Shari Yeshua Talmidei Shel Moshe, because Talmidei Yeshua, who was Moshe's student, he didn't use them when he came to wage war in Yerichai. We're not saying when Moshe Rabbeinu died that he used them. Not in association with that day. When Yeshua waged war on Yerichai, when he needed to gather, he didn't use the Chatzotzros. That's the proof. Say L'chom means only for Moshe, not for Yeshua. That's what the Medrash says in the beginning. Und erst der noch als Chidush b'fnei atzmei, that it adds as a new, novel idea is the Medrash Moisiv. The Medrash adds, V'loi toimer Yeshua bilvad. Don't think that just Yeshua alone was not able to use the Chatzaitres. It wasn't just Yeshua. Ela Moshe Rabbeinu Atzmei Atshu B'Chaim, Moshe Rabbeinu himself, as long, even while he was still alive, Nignazu, they were hidden, and that's why when he said Akhilu Elai, Ve'echen Hoya Chatzaitres, where were the trumpets? Well, how come he didn't use them? Elo, this is Loshnol from the Medrash, Nignazu, L'Kayim Hashanemer, and Shiltum B'Yem HaMavis. To fulfill, that's what it says, there's no dominance in the day of Mavis. So it's not connected to Yeshua. Yeshua is a separate thing. We learn this is something separate that even Moshe Rabbeinu is Tamua. So it's surprising. He kumtes as dav kirachshi. Welcher is mefaret pshut shel mikra. Specifically, Rashi who explains the simple meaning of the pasuk. So bring in the arichas. Why does Rashi bring down this lengthy explanation? For lefi and nemar. Because it says, Yeshua does not, and Rashi brings it down, Bekesher, in connection to the Hakola, Shadei Moshe, Akilu Elai, to this Hakola over here that took place to Moshe. What is it negate to the Hakola that Moshe, Akilu Elai, that which takes place by Yeshua? In the Medrash, Yeshua is one thing, and then separately we're talking about Moshe Rabbeinu, and Rashi bunches it up and brings in Yeshua here. Why? Well, the first I want to say that if Yeshua really would be using it, so even though Moshe Rabbeinu wouldn't, if he would use it, then it wouldn't be hidden, and then they could use it that day as well. The only Rashi has to say, because Yeshua didn't use it, and that's why they were hidden. So when Rashi says that it was not used by Yeshua, that's why it explains why it could be hidden, because Yeshua didn't use it. But that's not the order in Rashi. That Rashi should have said that Moshe Rabbeinu didn't use it, and it was hidden because Ein Shilton Biyad B'Mamisa, and then to say, and there was no need for Yeshua because only Moshe used it. Why does Rashi stick in as soon as we start off that they didn't do the Chatzaitzres, that Moshe wasn't dominant? How the order in Rashi doesn't seem right to bring down Yeshua. Meforshim Zayin Mevayer, Meforshim explain, as im hoye Yeshua shoyled behem achrei Moshe, if Yeshua would dominate them after Moshe Rabbeinu's passing, hoyitokim behem avoisa yom shabeis Moshe, then they would still blow them the day that Moshe Rabbeinu died. Und der Farbe word Rashi, that's what Rashi says, as lo hishlit Yeshua leim. He did not dominate Yeshua. Yeshua was not in charge over the Chatzot. He didn't use it. So Memela, he didn't have to use it. And that's what Rashi has to say. Otherwise, they would use it. But those for entering the Lashon Rashi, this still does not answer the language of Rashi. Rashi had gedarft l'chol l'rosh. First of all, Rashi should have answered. Rashi should have answered. How come Moshe did not use the Chatzaitzres? And the answer would be mitzad ein shilton b'yamavis. You can dominate b'yamavis. Or the noch meisiv sein. And then to add, ados was mehot ze nit genutzt al kol ponim mitzad Yeshua. How come they weren't used? Okay, Moshe Rabbeinu is no dominance, but from Yeshua, Yeshua is a dominant over there. Izval v'lo yishlit Yeshua aleya. Should add that. Aber nicht onheben mit den Inyan, but not to begin with the idea, because it says that I say lecho, v'lo yishlit Yeshua aleya, that doesn't fit and didn't dominate. That's not. First, let's talk about Moshe, and then we can add the other part about Yeshua if necessary. So the Rebbe is going to say that Rashi is really bothered by something else, even though Rashi brings the idea of the Chatzaitzres, but there's actually another issue. Let's wait. But first, the Rebbe asks two questions on the language of Rashi. There's some questions in Rashi's language. Ubahem, and amongst them, in them, is why does Rashi use, he didn't dominate Yeshua? Yeshua didn't use them. What is the loss of Lehishlit? Also, in the source from Rashi, they use the word mishtamish, to use, not the lashon of Hishlit. Why is Rashi saying he did not dominate him over them? He wasn't shoylet over them. Base. Well, Aleph. We passed the lashon shlita, b'lei hishlit Yeshua aleim. He did not have Yeshua dominate b'negei de chatzitzres, as it associates to the chatzitzres. Rashi had gedarft zogen. Rashi needed to say al derech loshna midrash anal, similar to the language in the medrash. V'loy nishtamish behem Yeshua. Yeshua didn't use them. Not Yeshua didn't dominate them. Ubefrat, especially Rashi himself, according to many versions, alet kama girsois, steht euch in Pirush Rashi of asay lecho. So Rashi also uses, according to those girsas, the word use them, So we see about the trumpets, it's a matter of usage, not to dominate them. Why does Rashi use dominate? And the other question is, why does Rashi quote from the Pasuk, Hakilu Elai, the word Elai, when Rashi is really only explaining Hakilu. Why did they do it without the trumpets? Rashi might in them dibura maskil. How come Rashi quotes in the opening, in the quote from the pasuk, the word Elai? Rashi is doch nor mefarish lechoyre. Rashi seems to only explain the word hakilu, as the oifen hakola is not given al dei chatzitzres, that it did not take through, that it wasn't through chatzitzres. So why it's negated to a lie? The Rebbe is going to explain that the truth of the matter is Rashi is bothered by another question. This issue that it wasn't done with the Chatzotzres is actually not so simple. That's not a given. That's why it's not Rashi's original question, because who says they weren't done with the Chatzotzres? We said because he told the Bnei Levi to gather, and Levis can't blow the Chatzotzres. But maybe the pasuk, when it says Levi here, means Kohen. Sometimes we find that the Levim could mean the Kohanim, and maybe they did blow the Chatzotzres. That's not such a strong question. Even though Rashi brings it down, Rashi many times doesn't bring down his problems. And even if Rashi brings down a problem, it doesn't mean that is the full problem, but Rashi is just giving you the answer without raising the question. Rashi has, as the Rebbe will explain, a totally different problem. Rashi has a problem. Why is it Moshe Rabbeinu that is doing the gathering and it's not Yehoshua? Because we already seen that the transfer of power already began on that day. Rashi brought it down earlier, and Rashi says later that Yehoshua was already somewhat in charge. So why did Yehoshua not do the gathering? And that's what Rashi means to say. While he was in charge of some things, but he did not make him dominate over the Chatzotzres. Dominant means he didn't give him any, and therefore this gathering was still done by Moshe Rabbeinu, and since it was done by Moshe Rabbeinu, and there was no Chatzotzros, as we will see. Let's look inside. Is the Bir Bazel Bahagdim? First, the Rebbe wants to introduce that Rashi doesn't necessarily say his question, so it could be a question that is not mentioned in Rashi. It says Yodua as al derech harogil, that in the most common is Darkish Rashi bePirusha la Torah. Rashi's style in his commentary on the Torah, and that's true too for the Gemara, nicht zu mefared sein die Scheile, was kommt verantworten, not to detail, to specify the question that he's coming to answer, but he comes and gives you the interpretation in Posik, in the verse, and automatically the questions are removed, are answered. Nochmer, it's more than when Rashi doesn't say the Shaila. Even Rashi will say a question, it could be that there's an even greater question than that. Nochmer. In viel erter, wo hebt on sein Pirush mit Shaila, in many places where he starts his commentary with a question, is as nit a far vados is the Shaila ikris. It's not that is the main question in Pasuk, in the verse, which he's coming to answer. Nor as von der Tiritz of der Shaila, but answering that question that Rashi presents, werd bederach memele verantwortet the Shaila ikris in Pasuk, that automatically answers the main question that Rashi doesn't mention, that we have in the Pasuk, but Rashi is nit mefared, that he doesn't detail. So Rashi brings in one question and answers that in order to answer a larger, a bigger question that Rashi did not specify in the beginning. And that's also what's happening here. In our case, those was Rashi hebt on sein Pirush. The fact that Rashi starts his commentary that on that day they did not use blow, the Chatzotzros, is does need the Shaila Ikris in Pasuk. That's not the main question in Pasuk. That's not such a question, because we can answer that. On the contrary, this is not the Kama Pashtonim Lernen. Many of the simple interpreters of the verse, they learn as midvaitzav Moshe Salevim Goimer. When Moshe commands the Levim, Lokayach HaSefer HaTeira Zeh Goimer, werden gemeint the Kohanim, that it's meant the Kohanim. There steht früher, it says earlier, by Yitno, the Sefer Torah, Ela Kahani b'nei Levi Goimer, that he gave the Sefer Torah to the Kohanim, the b'nei Levi. So here when it says b'nei Levi, it means the Kohanim. Lefizeh kemen doch lernen. So according to this, we are able to learn Akol Ponim al derech hapshat in the simple, literal level of the pasuk, as der hakilu meint kimishpat hayedu b'ayim b'chatzotzros, that this hakilu takes place in the normal way through the chatzotzros. So that's not such a strong question, but the Rashi means that with this question we're going to answer another stronger question. Now Rashi is the oisum beike, where Rashi is out here, intended over here mainly, Ashayla Kloli is a general question. In the Beta Verter, in these two words, Hakihilu Elai, it'll come on. Moshe Rabbeinu is the one that gathering him, and they're gathering to Moshe. Not Yeshua, they're gathering to Moshe. Why is Moshe gathering? As Rebbe will explain, it'll come on. So an answer to this question is Rashi Mefarish. Rashi is therefore explains as the Rakhilu do is given in an oifun, that they gathered here in a way from Veloisoku Isayoim Bachatzoitrus Lahakilas Sakol. On that day they did not blow in the trumpets to Lahakil Sakol. This explanation why they didn't under them biur, and when we'll explain farvos the akol is nid given bechatzotzros, when we explain how come the gathering was not done with the trumpets, werd bederach memele verantwoord de shaila klolis. This general question is answered when we figure out why is there no chatzaitzers. Okay, so what is the question? The question is, as mentioned, that how come Moshe Rabbeinu is doing the gathering over here? Hakilu Elai. The Shaila in the Verter Hakilu Elai was Rashi kum davorn, and that Rashi comes to caution and answer. Gleich betchilas haSeder in the immediately in the beginning of the Seder in Vayelech. Hachan Rashi mefarish, when Rashi already explained, Lo yuchal oid lotzis v'love. I am not able anymore to go out and come in. Lo yuchal, zokt Rashi. It's not that he's not able to because he didn't have the strength or the koyach. He's not allowed. Eini rashoi. Shenitno many horishus. The permission, the rights have been taken from me. Venitno liyeshua. They were given to Yeshua. And also a few verses later, similar thing. So Rashi aklal. Rashi gives you a rule. Dabar echad ladoir v'loi shnei dabarim ladoir. There's only one in charge, one ruler to the generation, not two rulers. Kumtuis. So it turns out, as Yeshua is showing geworden, that that Yeshua already became the one in charge of that generation. Is moksha, so it's difficult. Wie kommt es, as the Akhala from Eden is given to Moshe? How come this gathering of the Jews takes place to Moshe? While it is true, Moshe Rabbeinu wanted to speak to them. As Moshe Rabbeinu had gewollt allein reden zu Eden, he wanted to speak by himself to Eden, not Yeshua. I want to testify to the Yidden, the heavens and the earth. Aber das makil sein dem call, but to go ahead and gather the people is doch shaykh blois zum nasi. That seems to belong to the leader, zum manigader, to the leader of the generation. Vibald as Yeshua is shein geworden, der dabor echad ladoir. Since Yeshua is already the leader of the generation, hat gedarft makil sein die Eden. He should have been gathering the Eden. Moshe wollte say Geret, and Moshe would speak to them. He wants to speak to them. But who has the right? Who has the authority? Who's the daber? Who's in charge? That's Moshe Yeshua. So why is Moshe Rabbeinu saying it? So Rashi is bothered Akilu Elai. That's his key problem. Bakol ponim. Maybe even if you argue that Moshe is a little bit in charge, should have been both together. Al derech with the dibur by the hakola to Eden, similar to the speech to the Eden, is given to Rebbein. They both spoke. As the pasuk says. But why does it say Why does it gather to me? That Eli, Moshe, Zokta Kilu, Moshe says, gather to me. Yeshua, this rejects Yeshua. Why did he say that? How could he say that? So in order to answer this question, is Rashi Magdin, they did not blow in the shofar. On his gleich mevair benegay to Yeshua, and he explains right to Yeshua. It says you, when it's by medayik, below hishli to Yeshua alayhim. But thus, what does it mean? He did not dominate them. As lo hishli to Yeshua alayhim is mevar b'derech memela, pavos di hakhola is given durch Moshe k'del kamon. This explains to us he did not dominate Yeshua on them. They didn't blow, and he didn't dominate him onto the chatzos. And the Rebbe explains now what is the idea over here that we're saying that he didn't dominate them, that he didn't make him in charge over there. The Rebbe says, but how come Taka? Moshe Rabbeinu, yeah, the Rebbe says, I say Lecho, but he became the next leader, so he should take over the place of Moshe Rabbeinu. But Rashi says, you see that there's a certain level of dominance that has not been passed along to Yeshua. Let's look inside. Hey, in the minyan for Nasei L'chov v'lo hishlid Yeshua aleim, we say make for you and not Yeshua was not dominant, is l'chayren nit verstandig, not understood. The diuk asei l'chov, when we say make for you, ato isu mishtamish behem, v'lo yachar, you make them and use them, but not somebody else, is l'chayren nor shoylel dem shimush mitzei, that should only negate who should use it on Ishachar Stam, just some other person. The Eibishter gave it only for Moshe, not for another person. If we're dealing about Yeshua, Hashem will appoint a person over the community. He became the leader. Der Manik von Eden, he's the leader of the Jewish people. Roye von Adas Hashem, he's the shepherd. The pasuk refers to him. Adas Hashem Kitzayim B'li Roye. They have a shepherd. The shepherd of Hashem al Smalim Mokim for Moshe Rabbeinu. Moshe fills the place of Moshe Rabbeinu. How come these trumpets should not go to Yeshua? In order to use them to invite, to call the community. Just as the dominance of Moshe, who is the leader, the Dabar Echad, transferred to Yeshua, he became the leader. Why doesn't the Shalita, the Chatzaitzres, also transfer to Yeshua? Is the Fun Gufa gedrungen? So from this we can actually derive itself. As nit alin yone Moshe zanariber to Yeshua. That not all matters of Moshe transfer to Yeshua. While Moshe's Shlito of Eden, the dominance that Moshe Rabbeinu ruled of Eden is given a hechere Yeshua's, was on a higher level than Yeshua's. Al derech v'Rashi hat schon früher gesagt, similar Rashi already mentioned earlier, said earlier, Pnei Moshe kechama, Moshe's face like was the sun, Pnei Yeshua was kelavana, was the moon. And this is the diuk lashon Rashi, that's what Rashi says. Loi hishlit Yeshua leim, he didn't dominate them over the trumpets. Yeshua hat auf zei keshlita nit gehat. He didn't have any dominance over them. Weil nicht der ganze Inyan Hashlita von Moshe is übergegeben geworden zu Yeshua. Not all of Moshe Rabbeinu's dominance has been transferred to Yeshua. So that dominance did not extend to the Chatzaitzres. Al Pizei is verstandig. Since the dominance has not been given to Yeshua as it was by Moshe, so it's understood as Kozman Moshe Rabbeinu had gelebt, for as long as Moshe Rabbeinu lived. Afilu nordem v'nitla mimenu harishus v'nitla leYeshua. Even if it was taken from Moshe and given to Yeshua, hot nit kein ort as Yeshua soll sein der Makil von Eden. There's no really room for Yeshua to be the one to gather the Eden b'fnei Moshe Rabbeinu, in front of Moshe Rabbeinu. V'balde seinen given in Yonim, since there were matters Yeshua that did not pass over to Yeshua. Was in Zay is nor Moshe given that einziger Shalit, he was the only dominant. So Rashi is basically explaining the invisible question that it didn't say. Why does it say Akilu Elai? Why did Moshe do the inviting? Why did Moshe invite it to himself? Why did Moshe not at least together with Yeshua as the speaking to little Yeshua? So Rashi says they didn't blow with the Chatzotzres because Yeshua didn't get dominance. That means dominance remained by Moshe Rabbeinu at that time, even though he became the leader. But the dominance to invite that remains to gather the call, that belonged to Moshe and that did not go over to Yeshua. How come Onersh know them? After Virashi entered the Shaili Ikris, the main question, Ubahakola Bechlal, and in the general, why did he gather? How come he gathered himself? Bechlal, Haku alive. Why was it through Moshe? Rashi answers that first. Is Rashi Mefarish them Prat? Rashi explains was Moshe sich nicht benutzt mit die Chatzotzres, that also Moshe did not use these trumpets. For the answer, and Rashi answers it, that even during his lifetime they were hidden before the day he passed away. The is to fulfill that which it says there's no dominance in the day of death. So that's answers why also in that day Moshe Rabbeinu didn't use the Chatzotzres. Even though it seems that Pshutish al Mikra, as the Rebbe argued before, that they could have used the Chatzotzres. Maybe it was the Kohanim, as the Rebbe says, but the bottom line is Rashi chooses that Ein Shilton B'Yem HaMoves, that it was really the Levim and not the Kohanim, and even Moshe Rabbeinu, they did not gather that day with the Chatzotzres. So first Rashi answers that it was not Yeshua's place. He could not do it because Yeshua did not give an over dominance, just like he didn't dominate the Chatzotzres, so he wasn't yet fully dominant. That's why Moshe had to do the Akilu Elai. And then Rashi goes to explain that the reason why Moshe did not use the Chatzotzres because in Shilton B'Yem HaMoves. And now the Rebbe is going to explain in Yoina Shel Torah. Oizvov. From Yoina Shel Torah in the Pirush Rashi. The wine of Torah in the Rashi. The Rebbe wants to explain, but how come Take, this gathering was done by the Leviim and not by the Kohanim? It was different than all other gatherings. For Yoina Shel Torah in the Pirush Rashi. L'cheira is nicht verstandig. Es Take as die Akholot nicht gekannt sein durch die Chatzotzres. Let it be true that this gathering could not take place through the trumpets. Was weist auf an Inyan shel Shilton. That would show dominance. And Yema Misa ein Shilton. Parvosot aber gedacht sein noch Ashinui. Why did it need to be an additional change? As anstatt as die Kohanim sollen makhil sein Eden, that instead of the Kohanim gathering the Eden, is as getan geworden durch the Levim, it was done through the Levites. Why this extra change? Wenn man das verstehen, behagdim habiur hapnimi, in the Minyan, will understand in the inner explanation this idea, von ein Shilton b'yayim hamoves, there's no dominance in the day of death. It would seem that the level of the person goes down at the day of the death, that he doesn't dominate anymore. Why would the person lose level? Person should always go in a higher level. The Rebbe will explain there's no dominance because the person is higher than dominating, even because he is distinguished and separate from the lower level, not because he's missing. The L'cheira, vi kumtes as b'yom hamisa, how does it fit that on the day of the death, Zol by Moshe Rabbeinu zayin an inyan shel Yerida, that it should be a matter of descent Ein shilton, you should not dominate. By tzaddikim is the chayil rabbi. By tzaddikim, the contrary. Yelchu mechayil al chayil. They go from strength to strength. As they from day to day, they are elevated. Umikol shikein inem yoim achreim b'chayim chayusim al modein. Of sure, in his last day, while he lives in this world, certainly he should go higher. Is doch sicher as Moshe Rabbeinu is given betachlis ha'ilu, for sure that Moshe Rabbeinu was in the ultimate greatness, ultimate elevation. Ubefrat al pi hayadua, especially as it's known, as b'yoyim yisoseh, the day that Moshe Rabbeinu passed away, hat der grecht euch dem shar hanun, he reached also that 50th gate. During his life, there's 50 gates of Sharei Bina. His lifetime, he got 49, and the last day of his life, he got the 50th. He got the Shar Hanun, the 50th gate. From the Chamishim Sharei Bina Shenitna Ba'olam, the 50 gates of understanding that have been given to the world. Und bis dem Tag is nitnu leMoshe Chosarachas. Till this day, they were given to Moshe, but there was still one missing. The Shar Hanun. He got it at the 50th day. So how come we say all of a sudden there's no dominance? They're in them, so we can say the explanation as those was in Shilton B'Yom HaMavis, that there's no dominance. It's not a degradation. It's not taking away power. The contrary is by tzaddikim mitzad der maila from Yom HaMisa. By tzaddikim is because of the advantage of the day of death. As dan statement hecher von Yinyan HaShilton, that at that point you are beyond, higher than the idea of Shilton. When you say Shlita, dominance, that points to a connection to those who you dominate. From his shoulder and up, he was higher than all person. That's how high the king was. But talking about Shaul. So even Afilas Ein Shechem is Gebein Mekolom. Even his shoulder is higher than all the people. Balachas Kam V'Kam Az Reisha. For sure his head is Hechem Mekolom. So while he's higher, but yet is das Hagbo V'His Nasus, it's such a raising. It's a height and elevation. It has a connection, and there is a relation to the people. And in that consists the idea of dominate. As opposed to in the day of death, then you are elevated in such a way as mizin ganzen hecher von dem Am, that you're totally higher of the people. Then you're not even shaykh to the whole idea of dominating the people, because you are in a higher, distinguished, separated, elevated level. So one can think, since Moshe Rabbeinu was elevated to a level, to such a step, where is in ganzen hecher von Shlita al Yisrael, which is entirely beyond dominating the is nitok in chas v'sholim in shayches v'kesher. God forbid you're going to say there's no connection, there's no ties between Moshe and Yisrael, between Moshe and Yidden. Zog der pasuk, therefore the pasuk says, as afilu v'Moshe Rabbeinu state in der darge, even the way Moshe Rabbeinu is in that level, highest level. That is b'yoy Moshe, at the day of his death. Zogt Moshe hakilu elai. He says, gather to me. So Moshe, well, Eden Zainen be'etzem, we can still gather to Moshe, but Eden are in essence, ein zach mit dem etzem for Moshe Rabbeinu. They're one and the same with the essence of Moshe Rabbeinu. Ubel shein Rashi, to use Rashi's language, Moshe hu Yisrael, Yisrael and Moshe. Moshe is the Yidden, and the Yidden are Moshe. Those is their tam pnimi, and this is the inner reason for was the alcohol is given is that it was with the chatzaitzros. So now we understand uh, what it means that dominance means he's above dominance, but still brings them together because Yidden are still. So that's why it was b'lichat tzotzres. Hakole b'chat tzotzres. When you gathered together the people through the trumpets, weiß as das ist verbunden mit Yigi v'tircha. That points that there is effort, there's trouble. You have to blow the trumpets together. Aber in der Hakole von Eden zu Moshe. But when Yidden are gathering to Moshe, steht b'yoy Moshe, as Moshe is in the day of his passing, when es wird is Gala sein Etzem. When his essence is revealed, wird nisgala die Atzmius, die Keshayches von Yidden zu Moshe. Then is revealed the essence connection from Yid to Moshe. Nisgala umpayel, it's revealed and it impacts. And therefore, no effort, no trumpets, just get together, come to Moshe Rabbeinu. Ubichazal zogen, as the sages zogen, as by Yedin Eden, we have a Moshe Rabbeinu, we have a connection with Moshe Rabbeinu. As the sages say, by every Yid, is Yirah Milsa Zutrasihi. Hashem says, Hashem is asking to, Moshe says, oh, to Yirah Milsa Zutrasa. And he says, yeah, by Moshe Rabbeinu, even though for us not, but Yirah Milsa Zutrasihi. So how is it for all Yidden, Atoma, Hashem Lekecha, Kim Leira? Ask us, we ask, Absh ask us to fear him. The Farbas Legabe Moshe Milsa Zutrasihi, because the truth is, relative to Moshe, this is not a big deal. It's a small thing. But the Alter Rebbe is das Mevayr. The Alter Rebbe explains, as jeder Yid hat in sich b'mchinas Moshe Rabbeinu v'sholom. Every Yid has himself a part of Moshe Rabbeinu, peace unto him. But afal pi as nit jeder is margish b'chinas Moshe shebenavshe. Not everyone feels Moshe in his soul. Bald aber as Moshe hu Yisrael, v'Yisrael hu Moshe. Moshe is the Yidden and the Yidden are Moshe. Poil de bechinas Moshe oif und in jeder Yidden b'derech mela. It works, it impacts him, because it's the same thing. The Moshe and him is the same, even though he doesn't feel it, he doesn't know it, but it impacts automatically. As Yira Milsa Zutra say that the fear of Hashem becomes a small thing, because you have a Moshe in you. Papi say Yuvon, Pabos the alcohol is given dafke durch the Levim. Now we understand why this gathering took place specifically through the Levim. The Chelek zwischen Kohanim and Levim is the difference between the Kohen and the Levi. Kohanim seine bechinas Chesed, they are Chesed, Hamshocha milmayla lamato, to bring from above to below. Levim seine bechinas Gevura, Halo mimata lamayla. The river, Kidei zu makil sein Eden Elai, in order to get the Yid to Elai to Moshe. V'yer steht in a halo b'yom Moshe, as he is standing in his level of Yom Moshe. Hecher von Shilton, beyond dominance, is as durch the Levim, that you need the Levim for that. But tun euch by Yidden euch the halo, the Dargose shel Moshe, they accomplished by Yidden to step up and bring him up to the level of Moshe. This is Mesichas Shabbos Parshas. It's on Vayelech Tovshin Membes.